Well, talking about this relationship between philosophy and what's outside of philosophy, in the preface to Strange Tools, which I think is your first book on art and philosophy, you write that science and philosophy, to the extent that they concern themselves with art, tend to do so from on high. They seek to explain art, to treat art as a phenomenon to be analyzed. And then you contrasted this with the idea that art is its own manner of investigation and its own legitimate source of knowledge. And I found this to be a very striking dichotomy. And I was hoping you could elaborate a bit on this distinction between what I'll refer to as, I guess, maybe an analytic approach to art, one that tries to break it down, and then one which takes art as a source of knowledge in itself. And what one thing, just to add to that I found quite interesting about this is, I guess I see you, at least in the philosophy of mind, as working pretty squarely in the analytic tradition, where things are sort of broken down, as opposed to working in the continental tradition, where things maybe come out of uh, perception, which is taken as given. But that seems to be much more your approach to art and the philosophy of art.
Right. Art is art is just a big question. Art is just a big question. What is it?
Mm-hmm.
What is it doing? What is it for? What am I supposed to do when I'm in the presence of an artwork, whether it's a dance or a theatrical performance or a piece of music or a painting or an installation? Um, Art always, in that sense, throws us back on ourselves, throws us back on what we think we know, throws us back on what we're taking for granted. And I actually think that's where its knowledge making resources really lie. That art gives us an opportunity to interrogate ourselves finally, and in so doing, change ourselves. Um, Art is unstable and always resistant to any kind of definitions. Um, I think that the best philosophers of art, whether analytic or in other traditions, get that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think a philosopher, for example, who really gets that is Kant. Um, Kant wants to say that we don't know artworks the way we know what's going on around us perceptually, because the artwork precisely is something that is really just an opportunity for feelings that can't be subsumed under any kind of concepts, not the concept of beauty or any other concept. So we're in a different space than judgment, than categorization, when we're in the space of art. Um, and yet, our whole beings, for him, he talked about the free play of the imagination and the understanding, our whole beings are brought to bear on trying to grapple with this thing that we see that we can't categorize, that doesn't, when I see this pen, the pen tells my cognitive system what to do, but the artwork confuses my cognitive system. The cognitive system needs
Uh-huh.
to say, what do I do? And that's where the opportunity comes to us.
Yeah, that's actually exactly where I was going to go next. And I mean, it's the title of that first book, Strange Tools, because the pen is a tool that tells you precisely what to do with it. But you write that art isn't a technological practice, but that works of art are strange tools.
Right, right. That's, um, I mean, that in a way is one of the really interesting puzzles about art. All artistic practices are making practices. They involve drawing or staging or performing or putting together. Um, they involve manufacture. They involve tools. They involve skill and craft and knowledge and purpose on the part of the maker. And yet, artworks are only in very unusual circumstances things of which you can say they have a clear application or function. Um, artworks tend to be things that precisely defy function, defy purpose, defy teleology, which is another aspect of their not falling under concepts in any straightforward kind of way. So so the question I asked myself is, why is art so involved with making if the ordinary standards or criteria of successful making don't apply? Because normally, if I buy a car, I want a car which meets certain standards. It's reliable, it's inexpensive to drive, it handles well. And I can really enumerate, it has to be big enough for my family. I can enumerate and be very explicit about what I'm looking for in a car and what would make the car a good instance of its kind. You can never do that with a work of art. I mean, you can in a kind of in a sort of conditional sense that if you're within a certain artwork context, you might say, oh, this artwork is trying to do this, and then you can think about how well or not it achieves that. But from the point of view of the visitor to a gallery, the artwork is an intrinsically uncaptioned object, which just says to you, what am I? See if you can make sense of me. And yet, it's working in this space of making. So I had this idea that artworks are not so much special things that we make, but they're things that we make in order to explore the way making is special for us. We are makers as human beings. Our entire environments are these elaborately constructed, manufactured systems which organize us and in effect, in part constitute us. For we ourselves, our animal lives, our personalities, our social lives are, from a certain point of view, really complex nested structures of habit, all of which depends on the way they're scaffolded by tools and technologies. So the idea I had is that let's think about artworks as using tool making, using that now as a phrase to really describe the whole way in which human life is organized by technology through vast stretches of historical and prehistorical time. Think of art as using tool making as a raw material. So we're not just making more tools when we're artists, but we're putting tool making as such on display. And we're unveiling ourselves as tool users to ourselves. Again, that's shorthand for unveiling to ourselves a whole myriad of ways in which we find ourselves habitually organized. So a work of art is a strange tool. It's a tool which lacks what a tool ordinarily requires to be what it is, namely an established function and a setting in which it has application. When I walk to the door, I don't need to think about how to open it. Not because I'm so smart, not because any of us are so smart. The door was designed with a handle to fit my hand by people like me for people like me. Tools are always like that. A tool presupposes a setting in which a tool can be self-evident or obvious or something on which we can rely. That's never the case with art. So art happens in a kind of space where technology is denied.